Good. So welcome everybody to the sixth installment of our Doing Business in Europe series. Today the focus is going to be on Amsterdam and the Netherlands. We're joined by Johan van Brück, who's going to be with us today to do the interview with me. So let me just pop up the slides here. Yes. So we'll go back here to the first page. The topic today, and we're going to do this in two pieces. The first piece is just going to be a general overview of where things stand in the Netherlands today. We're going to focus on the health situation, and then after that we'll talk about the political, and finally about the economic situation today in the Netherlands. And this is all, we're here today on the 2nd of September, so we're still in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. And so Johan's going to shed some light on how the Netherlands has handled the situation the past 6 months and what things look like right now in the country. So that'll be the first 10 or 12 minutes of our interview today. And the second half of the time, the next 10 or 12 minutes, will be spent talking about this particular topic, why the Netherlands is a good location for companies expanding into Europe or expanding to Europe. So with that, let me just make some introductions. My name is Jeff Lamont, Managing Director of Terra Advisors. We're a sales and business development consultancy based in Europe, with offices in Europe and the US. We've worked for about 125 companies over the past 12 years when they've expanded operations into new territories where we cover. As I mentioned, we're joined by Johan van Brück. We've known Johan for almost that full time. I think he's one of the first business development professionals that came into our network more than 11, 12 years ago. And Johan, in that time and before that, has been involved in a lot of different sales activities. He's multilingual, based in the Netherlands, done a ton of business development for companies large and small in Europe or Central Europe, Europe in general, EMEA included, and then moving even on to Asia Pacific. So Johan, thanks a lot for joining us today for this interview. Appreciate your devoting the time.
Well, I thank you for having me here, Jeff. It's a great opportunity, and I would be honored and thrilled to help you and your customers to shine some light on the current situation here in Holland. I say Holland, but you can say the Netherlands. Both works fine here. So okay. We don't feel insulted when people say Holland or just Amsterdam. I hear that sometimes. So the health situation today, the political situation, economic situation, I think those are indeed important topics for the customers that you work with when they are planning to expand their business into Europe or maybe open their headquarters in Holland. So I'm happy to elaborate on these topics. So
great. So then, let me set up the first question. I mean, when we talk about the health situation, so as I said, it's the beginning of September. Every country on earth has faced and is facing huge challenges with the pandemic. So, but it's very hard for people to know what's really happening on the ground. So, I mean, what is the situation in the Netherlands right now in relation to the coronavirus?
Right. So I can imagine that Holland is not really mapped and not much seen on the world news, on the BBC and on the CNN news channels. So we're a small country. However, we have been affected, heavily. We took a big hit like any other country around the world. So when I look back 6 months ago, the coronavirus, I think, hit Italy first, and from there it was spread all over Europe. So we got hit somewhere by early March, late Feb, after Italy and Spain and France got their first cases. So we are a small country, but still we have a relatively high dense population. So we have 17 million people. That's our population. It's actually the second largest density population after Taiwan. So out of these 17 million people, about 69,000 people got infected to date. And unfortunately, we lost about 6,000 people here in Holland. We had our peak somewhere late April, first week of May. At that time, we had about 1,700, 1,800 people on the IC. But we never reached our limits of the capacity treating the patients in the hospitals that were in the IC. So we saw that on, all the world news, how bad things were in Italy, that they had to treat people in hospitals in the hallways, and it was not nice to look at. So fortunately, we did not have to deal with these kinds of lacks of capacity. So we had ventilators and everything was available. We had beds. We have this company Philips, which you know from the consumer goods and other electronics, but they have a medical division as well. Philips is a Dutch company by origin, and we had a lot of access to ventilators there as well. And also what helps is we have a great health system. So every citizen here has a health insurance. So that means everyone can go to a hospital and they don't have to expect a huge bill afterwards when they are dismissed from the hospital. So it's a very good health system, very mature, and also very affordable for the Dutch people. Mm-hmm. And also today we test a lot of people. We do about 200 to 220,000 tests a week. And we have a lot of drive-through test facilities in every major city around the country. So the coronavirus didn't go away, it's still here. So today we look at about 1% positive tests from the 200,000 a week. Interesting to see compared to April, May, is that it doesn't mean that more people are being hospitalized. So today we're every week between 30 and 50 people in the hospitals on the IC throughout the country. It's a relatively low number, so that's good. So today, the strategy dealing with this pandemic is with a decentralized focus. So we are looking at identifying and isolating and controlling the local outbreaks. So we are trying to identify first with all the tests that we do, and then isolate so we can keep our economy open and just take our measures on a local, regional level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's good to understand the situation there. I mean, let's look at how has been the political response and sort of the general political sentiment in the country. Everyone who's listening today and those who watch the replay will know that different countries have responded differently. Sometimes it's brought the political spectrum together, and sometimes it's sort of acted as a wedge and split it apart. And certainly anyone who knows about the Netherlands knows that you have your far right and you have your far left politicians there. So how has the response been?
Yes, well, good question, and it's very interesting. I like discussing politics with people. So first of all, I think our political environment is very stable. So today we see protests all around the world, and even here in Europe, in France, Belgium, and in Berlin last week, and in Germany, where thousands of people gather, even now during the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands of people protesting. We don't have that. It's not really in our culture. People look at the news and see what is happening today in the US with what happens in Portland the other week, and it's something that we are shocked with. It's not in our culture to go out and protest. So that means that our political environment is, I think, quite stable and safe, and people feel well respected and feel heard by the government. So a little bit of background. So the Netherlands, we are a monarchy. So we are a kingdom, and we are the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and that consists obviously of the Netherlands, but also some Caribbean exotic islands. So maybe you heard of islands like Aruba and Bonaire, Curacao, Sint Maarten, and Saba. Those are all beautiful places. I wish I could be there now. And those are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So our king That's King Willem Alexander of Orange-Nassau. This is also a funny fact. So the Dutch are known for their orange outfits when it's Queen's Day or King's Day today, or when we have big football games or championships. You will always see the Dutch dressed up in orange. So that's a bit of the history, because our king, he is King Willem Alexander of Orange-Nassau. Also important to know, our king, he's the head of our state, but his political role is limited. It's typically limited to the formation of our government. And other than that, the king has no real power, no real political power. He doesn't interfere in the daily decision-making processes. So unlike US, where you have Republicans and Democrats, in Holland we have many flavors, many political streams. And like you said, we have far left and we have far right, and we have everything in between. And that in between is where we are today with our government. So today, the Dutch coalition that was formed in 2017, it's mainly center-right political parties. So they have like objectives like economic growth, freedom, safety, education, innovation, but they also respect a lot of the what we see at the green left side of our political nation, where they would like to see health for animals, a sustainable future. That's all part of the agenda from the current coalition. And we have a prime minister, it's Mark Rutte, and he's already in his third term, and he will go for a fourth term. So he's our prime minister for over a decade. So he became our prime minister in 2010. He did a great job, everybody loves him, and he's a funny guy, he's easy to deal with, good negotiator, and the way he stood up and led us through this COVID-19 pandemic, I think he earned a lot of respect from the Dutch people. But also in the Eurozone, he's a respected leader. And why is that? Because he's sitting there already for such a long time, for over a decade. So Merkel, Macron, and all the European leaders really, maybe they don't look up to Mark Rutte, our prime minister, but he's being heard and he's well respected in the Eurozone. And again, it's a very safe place to be here. The political situation is very much under control, and we don't have any crazy stuff happening here.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So yeah, let's move on to the economic part. I mean, so what has been, I guess now we're about 2/3 of the way through 2020. So how has the economy been this year with the impact of the coronavirus? Some of the countries that we covered in the series, like Spain and France, Italy, have a huge tourist portion of their economy, and that was just decimated, at least in the first half of the year. But so how do things look today in Holland and over the past, I guess, 8 months?
Right. Well, let's start with our economy as a whole. So we are the 6th largest economy in Europe. So there are, of course, many larger economies here, like Germany and UK. But still, we take the 6th place. And our economy is a so-called market-based mixed economy, whereby we depend heavily on the foreign trade. So we are a real, true export nation. We are known for our #1 export product, which are, can you guess what our #1 export product is, Jeff?
Flowers?
Yeah, tulips. That's our #1 export product. I asked this question one time in the past, and it was to a friendly American business associate, and I said, "Oh, #1 export product must be ecstasy." He said, "No, it's tulips." So actually, it's about 50% of our Dutch GDP that is derived from the export and foreign trade. So it's a huge part of our economy. It's stable. However, I'm going to get there now. We saw a growth rate in our GDP in the past 3 years between 1.6 and close to 3%. the last 3 years. And that has put us in the top 3 countries, top 4 countries in Europe. However, naturally, due to the pandemic, first quarter of 2020, we saw a decline, and our GDP growth declined to 0.5%. And our outlook is, to be honest, it's not really good either. So we anticipate 5.8 to 6% decrease in our GDP in 2020. But to put that in perspective, if you look at countries around the Mediterranean, France, Italy, Spain, they are suffering more from this pandemic. They took a bigger hit. So they are looking at a decrease of their GDP somewhere in the 10 to 12% range. So we are about half of that, together with some other countries in Scandinavia and Northwest Europe. So it's not good, but it's not putting us in the danger zone. And we anticipate an increase of 3% next year in 2021. So that tells us that our government and the IMF and all the clever guys that look at our economy say that we will bounce back, we will grow again in 2021. So maybe we'll see 2 quarters of recession now, Q3 and Q4, but we'll get out stronger, not strong, but strong. And if you look at unemployment rate today, it's always been low, and it's high to our standards. It's at 4.5% today. And again, it's half of what we see in other countries in Europe. So it's not good. It's not bad. Again, it's not putting us in a danger zone. It may get worse in the next few months, and we may see that unemployment rate go up. But 4.5% is not too bad. So what helps is what our government is doing. So I think they're doing a great job. So they're committed, and they continue to support employers, employees, everybody that got affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of funds were made available. So far, the Dutch government reserved about $65 billion for so-called round one. And they spent to date about $33 billion for businesses so they don't get bankrupt, for people that get unemployed. It was spent on saving the airline carrier KLM, which suffered obviously. And the latest is that we have up to $265 billion still available to support businesses and people throughout 2021. So luckily, we before we got into this crisis, we had a strong balance sheet as an economy. I think one of the strongest in the EU. So we suffer, and it's challenging. But again, we think we will recover somewhere early 21, and we will see growth again. That's a bit of the outlook for Holland.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the summary. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's of the countries we covered, which are the 5 big ones in Europe, and you guys are the 6th biggest economy in Europe after those first 5 of UK, France, Spain, Italy, and Germany. France, Spain, and Italy have seen, as you said, 10 to 12% decrease in GDP this year. They'll see that. Germany and the Netherlands are closer to half of that, like you said, 6%, and UK is somewhere in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay, good. Well, that does work, let's say, segue nicely into our main theme, which we have about 10 or maybe a little bit less, 8 to 10 minutes left. So we just respect the time, just to talk about this topic of companies setting up to do business in the Netherlands. You certainly, or in Holland, you've certainly painted a picture of it's a healthy and stable place, relatively speaking. But tell us about your thoughts on companies setting up business there, and I guess what are the sort of reasons to do so, the benefits. I know you don't work for the Chamber of Commerce, and we don't ask you to act with that hat on, but there's a lot of companies we've heard of, which you'll mention a few. I know Netflix or Tesla or someone. These guys are decided that the Netherlands was a place they wanted to establish as their base. So there's definitely some good reasons for doing so. So I guess what are your thoughts there?
Right. Yeah, so Holland, I think it's a great starting point, Jeff, for companies that want to enter the European marketplace. And I often say to my customers, you can see Holland as Europe's front door. Also geographically, if you look at when you're traveling from the US crossing the Atlantic, first you'll hit the UK, and then second, just you fly 30 minutes east and you will see Amsterdam and Holland. So I think we serve as a gateway into Europe, and we have that strategic location right at the center of the Europe's largest markets. The markets you mentioned, like we're bordering with Germany, UK, France. It's all in very close proximity. So actually, I looked it up. When companies enter Europe and put their headquarters, for instance, in Holland, they have access to 170 million consumers within a 500-kilometer range. So that's a 350 miles range. From Amsterdam, you have access to 170 million consumers or population. And even if you look at expanding that to a 1,000-kilometer range, let's say a 700-mile range, you look at 245 million people, consumers. So I think that's a great opportunity, and everything is so close. I can take my car, drive to Paris in under 4 hours, or by high-speed train in 2.5 hours, or by plane in 45 minutes. So it's that location of Holland, I think, that is important for companies to consider Holland as the hub when entering the European marketplace. So we have this superior infrastructure. Sorry, I don't want to brag, but we do. So we are ranked number 3 in the world for the overall logistics performance. And we have the Rotterdam port. I'm not sure if people know Amsterdam, but we have the second largest city, it's Rotterdam. And that holds the largest port in Europe by far, and the 4th largest port in the world. So it's huge. We have an airport, Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. It's the number 3 airport in Europe, right behind London Heathrow and Paris Charles de Gaulle. We actually move just 1 million passengers less than Paris Charles de Gaulle. In Amsterdam, we have about 70 million passengers last year. And in addition, we have a large, extensive network of railway, roads, highways, and also when you look at the technology infrastructure, we have the 2nd highest quality broadband network in Europe. We have fiber everywhere. Of course, we are a small geography, so it's pretty easy to deploy this infrastructure. But it helps. It all helps for businesses and companies considering Holland as their hub or their gateway, or even establishing their headquarters for a European business. So about 15,000 foreign companies already choose the Netherlands for their EMEA headquarters. Like you said, there are a lot of US companies that have their EMEA headquarters in Amsterdam. So Amsterdam is our capital city, and you can look at companies like Zoom, Cisco, Tesla, Adidas, Nike, Under Armour. There are probably a bunch more that I forget about.
Yeah, I mentioned Netflix. I think you said Tesla. So yeah, I mean, it's just these companies have come there for certain reasons. So you talk about the infrastructure. I mean, we're just getting close on time. I mean, just let me list a couple of topics maybe you just touch on quickly. Taxes, people. Yeah, I mean, those are 2 big ones, I think. So do you want to talk about those a moment?
Yeah, so people, the Dutch are very easygoing. So English is our second nature. We learned to speak English at an age of 6 years old. About 90% of the workforce in Holland speak English fluently. I think people are used to a direct way of communication. We typically don't like people to put up masks or lie. We are pretty straightforward people. When you look at the tax climate in Europe, I think that is one of the key drivers for these large enterprises like the Teslas and Cisco's to put their HQ in Amsterdam, is that we have a very friendly tax climate. So the Netherlands has a pro-business climate. So when US companies are planning to expand their business into Europe and would like to open up their HQ in the Netherlands, my recommendation would be to first engage with the NFIA. And the NFIA stands for the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency. And it's a subsidiary of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And they have offices all around the world. It's been around for 50 years. And they're doing a great job. They have offices in the US, and they work together with the embassies and the consulate generals. And they make it easy for foreign companies, for US companies, to get set up in the Netherlands. So basically, they pave the way. You can approach them, and they take care of you. They take care of everything from setting up your office, the tax, everything. So when I look at the tax in more detail, let me elaborate a bit on that. So the corporate tax, about 16.5%. A lot of stimulating incentives to attract foreign businesses and investments. Like we have special measures for foreign expats. We provide certainty in advance to companies for future tax positions, so no unpleasant surprises. We're not going to bring companies to court for lawsuits, so we welcome foreign businesses and investments. We have special measures for the avoidance of double tax, of paying double taxes. We have special tax rates for companies that drive innovation and have R&D in the Netherlands. Companies like Tesla, they have like a corporate tax rate of 7%. Also, there is a possibility for tax exemption for companies with their EMEA headquarters in Netherlands. This is actually a big one. So what it does, so the tax exemption means that if you gain profits or dividends or capital gains or losses, they're fully exempt from corporate tax when you want to transfer that to your parent company, which sits maybe in the US. So this one is big. So you're not having to pay double tax. So that will be avoided with this tax exemption rule that we have here. So again, it's I think super friendly in terms of taxes for foreign investors and people that want to open an office, whether you're an enterprise or a startup.
Great. So look, we're just almost out of time. Let me just ask one last question, which we didn't touch on. I mean, we talked about it in the past. Companies coming to the Netherlands, do you think that's only so they can use that as a base to expand to the 5 largest economies in Europe? Or do you think that it's actually good as a starting point to start selling software and hardware and other technologies into the Netherlands as a first point of entry?
Well, yeah, good point. Both apply. So we see both companies establishing their headquarters here as a hub, as a gateway into Europe, but also to sell in country, onshore, let's put it that way, in Holland, or let's call it the Benelux. It's also typically mentioned Belgium, Netherlands, and Holland. Sorry, Luxembourg. Yeah. So yeah, it's very easy to manage if you look at the size of our country. I told you it's a very small geography. It's very easy to get around, and we have a lot of large multinational organizations even here in this small country. Companies like Heineken. Heineken is a Dutch brewer, and they're global. Shell, Royal Dutch Shell, Dutch company, number 7 in the Fortune 500. We got Philips, huge company, ING Bank, and a lot of other big banks and financials, Aegon. We got TomTom, we got Unilever, we got Booking.com. So there are tons of large organizations that people and businesses from abroad can sell into here in just domestic Holland or Belgium. Absolutely.
Great. Well, good. That's we could go on longer, but let's respect the 30 minutes. So thanks a lot, Johan, for the summary about things in the country, and also you obviously did some research to come up with this information. I know you're a knowledgeable person just to start with, but it's very valuable, I think, for the people listening today and the ones who listen to the recording later. So thanks again. Wish you the best, and thanks to the listeners, and everyone stay healthy and safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.